Yes. So, welcome to the Daily Huddle. Today we are talking about, is it true that as a man thinketh, so is he? Do we have direct causation based on our thoughts? And I'm going to ask you to not be quite so literal on things like this, because if it were true that you could just manifest from every thought, you know that there would be people no longer on this planet. You know that you would cause terror and mayhem with some of the thoughts that you've had in the past. So thank goodness that there is a distance, a pause between your thought and its manifestation. Because some thoughts you don't need them to bring, you don't need them to be manifested. It's a good thing that they remain in your head. And so the whole idea of as a man thinketh, so is he is about the dominant thought. It's about what you continually think about. What is the dominant thought? What is it, the thought that you give emotional weight to, and frequency, frequent frequency to, right? So that you think about continually. And that becomes an ongoing conversation. You are already a pre-existing conversation. And that is what we call, in some leadership development circles, context. You are already a pre-existing conversation of, there are certain things that are true in your paradigm, and then there are certain things that are not true in your paradigm based on the context that you already are. And the best way to check yourself, we always talk about check yourself before you wreck yourself here in the Daily Huddle. The best way to check yourself, if you don't know what context you already are, because there is an imperturbable law called as above, so below, as within, so without, which is the law of correspondence, then if you want to know what's within, look at what's without. If you want to know what's your intention, check your results. If you want to know what's your dominant conversation, what context you are already, look at your content. What are the results that you're already creating? What is your relationship with money? What are your results around money? What are your results around relationships? What are your results around your fitness, your wellness, your health? What are your results around your beauty or your presence or your talent in a particular domain? Are you a great speaker, or are you nah? Are you a great athlete, or are you Hmm? And so there are certain parts of your life, there are certain domains of your life that you've made mediocrity okay. That is a tolerable level of existence for you in that area of your life, mediocrity. And then there are others where you're like, no, and not on my watch. And over here, we're going to be outstanding. Over here, we're going to be excellent. Over here, we're going to be masterful. And that's okay too. We're always making these decisions about, what's tolerable and what's not tolerable, what level we want to play at, and what level we are okay just existing. And so, yes, it is true that as a man thinketh, so is he. But it's not just any random old thought. It requires presence of mind. It requires context. It requires frequency and emotional weight. Right? So, given all of that, could you change the content of your life by changing the context? And I'm going to assert that that's the only way that you can sustainably change the content of your life, is by changing the context. If you try to do the content first, that's what I like to call behavior modification. And that's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. It's like moving chairs around at the Titanic, right? It's like, okay, the dining room looks great, but we are all going down. So what would be the point, right? And so I want to give you some tools and some strategies for you to take this on and try this on in certain parts of your life where you might want to expect some change. before you start moving chairs around in the Titanic, before you start behavior modification and thinking, if I take different action, I'll get different results. I want you to take out a piece of paper and I want you to draw a circle on it. I'm going to give you one of the concepts that I teach in my book, On Fire, 7 Strategies to Ignite Your Business and Light Up Your Life. So take out a piece of paper, draw a circle on it, and imagine that the circle is a clock, right? So we have a 12 o'clock position, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock position, right? At the top, at the bottom, at the left and right. And at the 3 o'clock position, you're going to write the letter A. That stands for action. At the 6 o'clock position, you're going to write the letter R. That stands for results. And at the 9 o'clock position, you're going to write the letter E, and that stands for experience. So action, result, experience. And people think that the bulk of your actions create the bulk of your results, which create the bulk of your experiences, and that defines who you are. But you're missing a piece. The bulk of your actions come from the 12 o'clock position, which is B. And that B stands for belief. This is the bear cycle of manifestation. Your beliefs drive your actions. And that is what generates results. Notice that the B and the R, beliefs and results, are diametrically opposed to one another. They are mirror images of one another. That is why one person that takes that particular action gets this particular result, but the other person takes the same action and sometimes gets opposing results. Somebody launches a program, launches a business and makes a lot of money. Another person launches that same program, that same business, and they go bankrupt. Why? They took the same action. Because they come from different belief systems. And that is why I say to you that if you choose a different come from, you get a different outcome. The come from is different, therefore the outcome is different. And so the belief is where you have all the power, where you can change your subconscious, where you can reprogram your mind. You can renew the way that you think about yourself and the identity that you have allowed yourself to believe is yours. Do you believe that you are an athlete? Or do you believe that you're just, middle-aged person just trying to lose some weight, just do your thing, clock your time at the gym? That's a very different come from. An athlete doesn't work out. An athlete does training, conditioning, right? And whether they like it or not, this is something that is moving them forward in their identity. Just like a parent may not like changing diapers, but it's part and parcel of taking care of this child that you love so much. So liking it has nothing to do with whether you're doing it or not. Feeling like it doesn't have anything to do whether you are going to do it or not. It's part of the identity. If you were a financial guru, if you were a financial master, even just at the consumer level, even just at the personal finance level, it doesn't have to be at the markets. But if you were a financially savvy person, then you would take the time to look at your numbers, to look at your balance sheet, to look at where your investments are, to reorganize the diversification of your portfolio for the sake of your growth and your goals and so forth. And it would not be something that you would bury your head in. Because why? This is something you do. Whether you feel like it or not, whether it's pleasant or not, has nothing to do with it. It's something you do because it's someone you are. And so the way to change your orientation around as a man thinketh, so is he, is that as a man is, so he thinks. And as he thinks, so he produces. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I need some participation. I need you to put a 1 in the chat so that I know you're tracking and that you're picking up what I'm putting down. Because this can be revolutionary. This was the sneak peek. This is like the creak in the door that let me know that there were some things that are not inevitable. It is not inevitable that if you quote unquote get stage 4 cervical cancer, you are going to die. That's not inevitable. You could change that. You could shift that by the power of your thought. And I'm here today, 20 years later, to tell you that actually it is not a death sentence. You can live through that. You can survive that. You can thrive even after that, if you decide what track you're living on. I had no idea when that happened. When I did get stage 4 cervical cancer, and I went to my pastor at the time, the late, great Reverend Dr. Mary A. Tumpkin, and she sat me down in her office and she said, which conversation are we having? Are you getting ready to live or are you getting ready to die? Because if you're getting ready to live, all of this fear and concern, oh my God, and what's going to happen to my daughter and she's going to grow up without me, it's irrelevant if you're getting ready to live. And if you're getting ready to die, then this conversation about alternate therapies and healing this and healing that and herbs and medicines and chemo and radio and therapy, also irrelevant. Just put your shit in order. Excuse my French. You got to pick a lane. And the thing about picking a lane, I told you about frequency of thought, right? You have to stay consistent in that thinking of thought and not deviate from it. Part of the reason why your manifestations have been delayed is because every time you sit down to eat at the restaurant and you say, I want this from the menu, you bring the cook back and bring the waiter back and say, change my mind. Now I want this. And so the kitchen doesn't know what to bring you. So your manifestations get delayed. See? But if you stay in, this is what I am producing, and I am not deviating from that. It doesn't matter what the 3D tells me. This is what I'm bringing forth from my mind, from my vision, from my intention. And I will not rest. I will not stop until that is what's in front of me. You already know that the physical universe is denser than the internal universe. You already know that. So why are you getting upset? It is in its nature that it's slower to manifest in the physical. It takes 9 months just to produce a human being, even though you had the intention 9 months ago, right? It takes 4 years for some people, 3 years, 2 years, it doesn't matter. It takes some time to, once you set the intention to go to college, to walk away with a degree. It takes some time. It takes 40 years to be a 40-year-old. There's no shortcutting around that. So since you already know that there comes a time, there's a delay, there's a process between intention and manifestation, then stay steady. Stay steady until you finish that process. And it happens everywhere. If you decide that you're going to go right now, some of us live in Atlanta, Georgia. If you decide that you're going to fly from Atlanta, Georgia, let's say to Hawaii, you have to take steps that are consistent with going from your bedroom to the garage, from the garage to the car, from the car to the airport, from the airport to the terminal, from the terminal to the plane, from the plane to the other, right? So it's like, it takes process. And if at any time you stop, you go somewhere else, instead of going to the terminal, you go to the cafe, you may have completed these 27 steps, but you didn't complete the rest of them. So why are you surprised that you're not producing the thing that you're not in Hawaii already? Does this make sense what I'm saying? Is anybody convicted? Is this resonating? Are you like, oh, she's in my Kool-Aid today? Because some of you are like, oh, well, maybe I could do this. Well, maybe this. Well, what about? How about you stay steadfast? How about exercise that muscle? How about practice that? Because let me tell you something. If you have ever seen a child trying to get a cookie or a candy or, outside playtime, even when they've been on punishment and they know they're not supposed to come out of the room, but what do? This is what I want. This is what I'm getting. I don't care if I have to talk to mama, grandmama, daddy. Somebody's going to give me what I want, dagnabbit. Right? And so let's be as little children. You already know you came already manufacturer installed with the level of discipline and consistency and commitment and relentlessness that you need in order to produce everything that you want to produce in your life. You've just been redirecting it to something else. You've allowed hesitation to come into the world, into that process. You've allowed, distraction to come into that. You've allowed doubt to come into that. But that's of your own making. You could make a different choice. Good news and bad news. Bad news is you decided that. Good news is you decided that, right? You've heard me say there's only one problem, who you say you are, and there's only one solution, who you say you are. So every day is a choice point. At every moment, life is asking you, who do you say you are? What are you up to? And your thoughts are the breeding ground for your results. So talk to me. Tell me, what are you thinking? How is this resonating? What's going to be different today because you had this conversation? Questions, grievances, comments, concerns? Talk to me. Who's got something? And Lisette, I can't really see who's raised their hand from here because I'm on a different device. Like that. I don't even know what I'm doing on this device. Who's got something?
Okay, I'll go.
Okay. I'm
I
sure.
totally feel called out. Totally.
Hey,
Totally.
tell me
Um,
how. What do you mean?
I say I'm going to do something and then distraction, distraction, distraction. And it's at my core level of belief.
Hmm.
Do I really believe I can do this? And so I avoid the follow-up steps to really prove myself yes or no.
Right. Yes.
And
So,
I know I can do this. But knowing and believing are two different things.
right. So let me help you with this process a little bit. There is a part of you that is capable and willing to do all the things that are in your highest good. And then there's a
Mhm.
part of you that's like, bump that. I'm going to do the comfortable thing. I'm going to do the familiar thing. I'm going to do the easy thing. Da, 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 right? At, at every point, you are at choice. It's not so much, do I really believe it? The point is, which part of you are you paying attention to? Which part of you is the dominant voice, right? Because both of them are right. At the same time, they are both right. And the one that gets to be manifested is the one you're paying attention to.
Which wolf do you feed?
Right. Exactly. Which wolf do you feed? That's exactly right. And so sometimes you have to talk yourself through it, especially if it's unfamiliar, or because you are kind of like breaking gravitational pull from the thing that you've used to do. Some people say, well, I'm so used to sabotaging myself. Okay, well, no, okay, hold on. First of all, there's no such thing as sabotage. There is, I am looking out for my needs. And if your need for certainty, your need for comfort, your need for familiarity is stronger than your need for achievement, then that's what's going to take dominance. You just have to shift your orientation to say, I would rather have my achievement than my certainty. So let me go focus here. And then when you see yourself kind of veering into certainty, you're like, yeah, come back over here. We do this all the time when we drive, especially when we need some wheel alignment. You know your car needs a wheel alignment and you know it veers over here. So you compensate and you come over here a little bit stronger. We do this with our concentration. We do this with our intention. We do this with our thought. And so I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying don't have the thought that you can't do it. That thought is going to exist there. And the more you resist it, the more it'll persist. I'm just saying, thank you for sharing. We're doing this now. I'm not resisting you. You can still sit there, but you belong in the back seat. You're not driving this bus. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then we just
So,
have to be honest about like, okay, but I'm choosing. Like, if we get honest about what we're actually doing, if we get honest about what we are actually doing, the act of observing ourselves be there is enough to interrupt it. If you were to be really honest with yourself and say, I am choosing my smallness instead of what I say is important to me, just the act of saying that to yourself, you're like, I'm tripping. Nah, this changes today. If you were to say that. But sometimes
Yeah.
we get so vague and we're like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I just, da 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 da. And it must have been my childhood. And it must have been, it's just distractions. No, they're choices.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when we can speak to ourselves honestly that way, we do a better job of interrupting the crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. That
You're
makes total
welcome.
sense.
Yeah, you're welcome. And as you go on, it's safe. It is safe to trust myself. I know I've let myself down before. I know I've said I'm going to do some things and I haven't done it. I've disappointed myself, but it is safe now to trust myself. It is safe now to keep my own word to myself. And sometimes you gotta like reassure your subconscious. I was like, no, we're not tripping. This is just a new day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Welcome. Chase, you're up.
Grand Rising, how are you?
Hello, Chase.
I was going to say something that really helps me over the years is actually remembering all the wins, remembering all the times when my
Yes.
mind frame was in such a great place. All of a sudden, pop, 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 all these things were happening around me.
Yep.
And I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago about this topic. And I said, the last time I looked at myself and said really clear, like, I want to get a great new gig, like in another country. I want to go away for a little while. I want to do something really different. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a friend of mine who's a vocalist who said, I have a friend that's looking for someone just like you. And I was like, okay. And they gave me the number and I met with the guy. We went to a place. We sat down at the piano. We did some stuff. He goes, I want you to go with me. I was like, cool. And I was in Azerbaijan singing for a restaurant opening. I went on a Thursday and I came back on a Monday. I made a lot of money and I sang for like 3 hours in 4 days.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm chiming in to say, just to speak to people and say, one of my tools is remembering the state of mind you were in when you were winning in your perspective. Like, what were you thinking about?
Wait, say it again. Remember the state of mind you were in when you were winning.
Right.
Is that what you just said?
Correct.
Wow, that's powerful.
Just came out of nowhere, but I wanted to share it because I think that's important.
Remember the state of mind you were in when you were winning. I love that. I'm going to take that too. I'm going to give you the credit the first time. After that, it's mine.
Oh, boy.
I love it.
So that's what I wanted to say, and I hope that helps someone because I think we spend too much time thinking about when we were not winning, and it pulls us away.
Right.
Thank you. Enjoy the day.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. And everything that you're saying now reminds me of something that happened to me a while ago. I was visiting my sister in Florida, and I am much more of like a strength training and a lift weights and stretch and mobility, flexibility, agility type of person. My sister is much more like endurance and long distance running and so forth. She invited me to go out running with her. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I'm running and I'm huffing and puffing and running out of breath. And I'm getting frustrated because how many of us quit something just because we're not good at it yet? And then we don't want to deal with our own incompetence or our, that learning curve or whatever. So I was getting frustrated that I wasn't running properly, that I was out of breath. And I just felt, unprepared. And I got so frustrated. And I said to her, but Kat, her name is Katya, but Kat, can't you just see I am not a runner? I'm not a runner. And I'm crying. And so she turns around, she stops, she's like, you're saying you're not a runner as you are running. I always love to tell that story because I was like, holy moly, talk about gathering evidence, right? So yes, be careful where you look for evidence. You will find it. Absolutely. Right. Thank you for that. Who else has something? Yes, Laura says, thank you, Chase. I will keep this. Absolutely. I'm going to keep it. How come it mutes me when I change screens? Anybody else? Comment, question, grievance, concern?
Doc, I just like to say, and Chase made me think of one of the books we've read on our morning platform,
Mm-hmm.
and we've read it twice. Some of the folks were not with us on our first reading, but it's Think Like a Winner by Dr. Walter Doyle Staples. And
Oh,
we actually had the pleasure the first time we read it back in about 2015 or 16 for him to actually come on the line. He was 88 years old living in Canada. He's written
wow.
he's written 9 international bestsellers, right? And he was 88 then. And he came on and just spoke with us, and it was amazing on our morning platform. And at any rate, in his book, he has a section that we have something called the confidence builder.
Mm-hmm.
And he speaks about remember, he said stand up, feet spread apart if you can, or whatever position you can get in when that makes you stand erect or sit erect, however it is, right? Maybe if you can only lay on your back, lay in that position. But remember a time when you felt your best, your most confident. Revisit that time, bathe in the emotions of that time, and then make a physical gesture, like maybe take your dominant hand, and pound into the fist. All right, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
can. I can. And say that, or take your hand and pound it into your palm,
Wow, I should
He
have
said,
do that to my chest.
yeah,
Okay,
right.
go on.
He says do that for 10 days straight. Do it as many times a day as possible. Do it 5, 6, 7 times a day for at least 10 days straight. He said after a while, all you will have to do is do that gesture, and
Yes,
it'll take you back to that frame of mind.
beautiful.
So that's what
Classic NLP. Yes,
yeah,
I love it.
classic NLP. And that's what Chase just reminded me of. So thank you.
Beautiful. I love it. So let's do that as homework assignment for today's session. Thank you, Stan, for bringing this to our presence. Let's do that all together. Choose a time when you felt at your best, when you knew you were kicking butt and taking names, you were
Yeah.
the best version of yourself. And bring that feeling, bring that experience, bring that awareness and way of being to mind. And then choose a gesture that will, it has to be easy and it has to be fast.
Yes.
It can be an inside joke, like what I just did right now, like that. It could be pounding into your chest. It could be stretching your hand, something simple that only you know what it is. And then that is your symbol for yourself that, ooh, it's about to go down. I'm about to be the best version of myself today. So choose that for yourself. And Laura says the bolt gesture. Yes, I love it. I love it. Thank you, everybody, for participating with us today. Thank you so much for being patient as I went to another device. I'm not used to doing this from my cell phone. And remember to love generously, laugh a lot, eat more plant-based, stress less, sleep at least 6, 7 hours. But if you're a woman, 8 or 9, okay? Because we need more time to deal with these people. And give of your time, your energy, your attention. Exercise. Remember that twerking is a spiritual practice. You can raise your Kundalini energy by twerking. And last but never least, audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Thank you so much for being here. Mwah. See you next time.
Thank you, Doc.
Thanks, everybody.